And then internal, external starts to align. And when that aligns, boom, you have growth right there because you match the customer insights and you do it in a real and credible way. So that is sometimes hard.
This is the inverse of when people say culture eats your strategy for breakfast. Hi, I'm Matt Egol, host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive impact by focusing on their customer experience and culture together. I'm really excited to be here today with Gijs. He's the founder and CEO of Lemon Scented Tea. I'm going to let him pronounce his last name for you and also tell you a little bit more about Lemon Scented Tea. I've always enjoyed teaming together, guys. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. And then my name, here it comes. It's Gijsbregt Vijn. It's very Dutch, and the BRGT is like unpronounceable for people which are not living actually in the Netherlands. So guys is fine. So all good for that.
It's awesome because I know I would not get that right, even though I've been to Amsterdam like 50 times. So I've still never learned how to pronounce a name like that.
No, but the gr is just unpronounceable. You know, the gr, yeah.
Yeah. So it's great to have you on the podcast, guys. Lemon Scented Tea is positioned as a global creative agency specializing in creating cultural brand transformations in hospitality, retail, and aviation. Just to get us going, what's a cultural brand transformation?
Yeah, it's a good question. For us, a cultural brand transformation is all about combining the internal and the external. So the first step is really looking into a narrative for the total company with a clear North Star. And instead of just, telling that to the customers, we say, yeah, absolutely, tell it to the customers. That's your brand positioning. Very important, but also tell it and share it with the internal company, because we believe that the promise to the outside needs to be delivered on the inside. So what you create for your campaigns externally, for your communication externally, needs to be proven by your customer experience and the employee experience. So if you look at, for example, a brand transformation is about positioning, where a cultural brand transformation is about setting up a new worldview, a new visual identity, we're talking about a new belief system. Where brand transformations are more marketing-led, cultural transformations are leadership-led. One of the most important things for actually true change is that leadership embraces it. Where campaigns are important for brand transformation, for cultural brand transformation, it's all about behavioral change. It's about also behaviors of your people amongst each other, but especially also towards the customers, because that drives, of course, customer satisfaction and NPS, retention, and all that. But we'll come to that probably later in the conversation.
Absolutely. And people who've been a fan and liking and following the podcast know that the connection of brand and CX and culture is really what this show is all about. So I'm really excited to have you on. And we actually met through a colleague, Gretchen. We can say hi to Gretchen.
Hey, Gretchen.
who introduced us. And Gretchen is an alumna of the Katzenbach Center that I was very involved in at Booz and PwC. So she introduced us. We're all kindred spirits that believe in the importance of culture and how it connects to brand and company and leadership. So thanks, Gretchen, for connecting us. I've really enjoyed collaborating with Guy since you connected us.
Same here. Thank you, Gretchen.
So tell us more about Lemon Scented Tea. It's a really cool name. How'd you come up with that?
Yeah, it's there are basically two stories. The actual story and the bigger marketing story is all about the combination, the comparison between building strong brands, communication, and companies with actually making tea. So the tea bag represents the core DNA of a company, the narrative, the North Star. And the pot with water resembles society and your employees. together we compare what should be in the tea bag, so into the in the North Star. And then together with your teams, we create fantastic ideas, concepts, and ideas for internal and external to put the tea bag into the water, and then you get your own flavor set and color. A flavor set and color that is created by your people and is actually communicated towards your customers. You can put a little milk and sugar in it for your own sake if you like that. So that's actually what we do, giving brands flavor, scent, and color. And lemon was just fresh. Could have been also something else. We thought lemon, let's do that one. And the other story, we had another name, and we felt it was not the right name. And we planned a trip to the US because we're actually based in Amsterdam. We also have hubs in the US, in Atlanta, New York, and LA. But at that time, we didn't have that. So we went to the US. We thought we need to change the name. And we were sitting in an Amsterdam cafe, and we're like, we need to change the name. What could be a great name? What could be a great name? And I was making that tea there. And then I suddenly saw next to me this twinning tea bag, maybe it's twinning, it's lemon scented tea on it. So I grabbed the tea bag and I look at my cup. I'm like, this is interesting stuff. Let's call it lemon scented tea. So this is actually the true story how the name came about. But the way we talk about it is the first version of the story.
It's really fun. I love the way you think of the employees co-creating the brand and co-creating the experience. It has an impact on society, not just the company itself.
I just actually, I'm right now in a research piece, what the employee experience and the employees can do also for your customer KPIs. And that is quite big. Some really interesting research from Harvard Business Review, but also PwC. It really shows that the employee power is way beyond the internal communication and the internal organization. And I think there is not enough attention for that. I think it's a big opportunity for many companies.
I'm going to hold up a book for a minute. The Soul of Strategy by Bernie Jaworski. I'm going to have him on the podcast for a second time soon. He's a professor of the Drucker Chair at the Claremont School in California. That he sits in the chair that like the Drucker used to use. But the reason I bring up the book is Drucker was really focused on like one of the fathers of management thinking, who's often misquoted on saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. He actually said something similar, but not the same thing. What Bernie has written about in this latest book that he really focuses on is how you want to make the customer experience the center of your strategy, but that really the way you engage your employees is key to that, and culture is key to that. And Drucker actually liked to talk about creating a well-functioning society and then like how important the purpose and mission of a company was, and the employees bringing, so he was way ahead of his time.
I love that. And I think also when we look now into the future where it will be more mediated, more digital, more self-service, more AI. And if your company consists of more AI agents, then who keeps the soul of your identity? And if only leadership has that in a company of 100,000, then you see that the possibility there that you lose your soul as a company, and then you lose direction.
Well, and you talked earlier about the brand is if the leaders contribute to shaping the brand and not just the marketing team, but really what you're highlighting, you started talking about behavior, that's what culture is all about, behavior. So if the employees don't engage in the behavior, if the leaders don't engage in behavior, then the brand is going to be soulless.
Exactly. And an empty shelf. And if you don't prove it, if you look at Trustpilot now and Google Review, I mean, everybody has like 2 checks. Love the brand, check the reviews. And if your CX is bad and your employee experience is bad, then people are like, well, maybe not going to interact with this one because they promise a lot, but they don't deliver on it.
Now, I'd be remiss talking about soul and strategy and brand and customer experience and soul if I also didn't give a shout out to Simon Robinson, who was on the podcast recently. So folks should check out the podcast with Simon. He's the author of the best-selling book, Designing Customer Experiences with Soul. Maybe next month I'll have like a chef who cooks soul food on the show. You know,
Maybe,
there's
yeah.
some
Yeah.
soul is
It's
really
a word.
important to me. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the work that you've done in hospitality, retail, and aviation, I can see the connection to employee and frontline engagement because these are industries where the brand is delivered through the people. So, how did you build that specialty? How do you get involved in those industries in particular? And what kind of connects them with the type of work that you're doing?
Yeah. So I think around 6 years ago, we created like an ownable storytelling structure and way of working. And we looked at how stories are being told around the world. And if we look at the entertainment industry, which is all about engagement, this, of course, also the profession we are in. If you look at what the entertainment industry is using, they're using the universal storytelling structure. And the storytelling structure is super simple. You have one main character. Then the main character has some sort of goal, finding a treasure, liberating a princess or a prince. It can be anything. The main character has special powers because Superman can fly and Spider-Man can shoot a web, and there's always an adversary in the story. So we've been working with a lot of companies to use this storytelling structure to position their brand or their product or their division to come up with a narrative that gives direction for these companies, especially on the brand side of things. And then I got a call from a good friend of mine in the US. He said, "Hi guys, can you please also use this fantastic narrative structure to help change the mindset of a team?" And that was a team of one of the biggest airlines in the world. And that team needed to go from being the mask police during COVID towards a premium brand concierge. So they had to change their complete role and their mindset. They had no idea how to do that. So instead of positioning and creating a narrative for a brand, we create a narrative for a group of people. And then the next step comes in. You can have a fantastic story for all these people, but it's all about the behavior. They need to change behavior. First mindset, then also behavior amongst each other, shared values, shared behaviors, and of course, towards the customer. So that's where it started. And that's around 6 years ago, where we started to work with these corporations to truly help build that cultural transformation for them and reaching their business goals basically to do that.
What's a good example of work you're proud of? With I don't, you feel free to share brands if you're comfortable, but where you worked with them on a kind of this inside out transformation where you're helping them realize their brand and perhaps stretch and evolve their brand through engaging their employees.
Yeah, so we've been and are working with several bigger corporations. So, for example, ISS Global is a big facility company. We've been doing stuff with Delta. We've been doing stuff with Lufthansa, Atlanta Airport, Schiphol a while ago, but also working with them. In the Netherlands, in Europe, we're working on with a big energy company, one of the biggest here in the Netherlands. So we've been doing this for quite a while for many different corporations. And the funny thing is, they're all different, and there is not one recipe, but there is one structure of how to do it, and there are also certain key ingredients of making it a success. One of them is leadership needs to own this instead of make it a sub project somewhere and let's see what happens. I think that's number one, buy-in from leadership. Second is emotion is super key, because it's not fun to change when you're not engaged or you're not like, I don't want to change. And most people don't want to change. So you need to have this foundation of engagement that is fun to go on a journey, the next journey. The third piece, which I think is very important, is first you need to listen. If you want to change a big group or big team, you first need to recognize them that they're important and need to listen where the issue is. Or else you have grumpy people who are at a situation they feel not heard. It's very difficult to change. So Listening is also one of the most important things. And then the last one, and there are maybe more, but I think these are the most important, is make it feel serious and sustain. Because you can't chase your team or your division or even your company in a week. And also a lot of employees and in general people are like, okay, one group starts, and the enthusiasts, but that's maybe 10%. And then if it's serious and they get good feedback, the next 20% comes in. And then if it keeps on being important and in evaluations, suddenly you are being judged by it, then suddenly the next 50% comes in, et cetera, et cetera. So sustaining is also part. I think these four are key to make these transitions.
So I'm going to come back to emotion. Those are all super important. I think that's really valuable. Thanks for sharing that with the audience. Um, when you talk about emotion, guys, are you thinking about the customer's emotions, the employee's emotions, or both?
Both. Both. I believe the funny thing is, I believe that internal change starts on the outside. Because if you want to change internally and there is no outside sense of urgency, it becomes a training. And one thing, if you think you can train yourself into change, it's not going to happen. It should be a leadership owned culture program with training in it. So I believe start on the outside, build that beautiful promise, that big narrative, make sure you start to communicate it to these customers. And then you're like, ooh, I need to deliver on this. So there can't be too much light between it. But if you don't have an outside sense of urgency, inside change is very difficult.
I'm going to, if you allow me, I'd love to get your thoughts on this to build on some of what you said about some of the ways I see emotion playing, and then we can go back and forth on this, I'm sure. Um, have some fun with it. The first is when we think about a brand's a promise, right? But a brand, a lot of times people, when they talk about branding, they talk about how you want people to describe the brand. But a corollary to this is how the brand makes people feel. Right. And the how the brand makes you feel as a customer is actually the connection between customer experience and brand. That's the fusion point. If your CX doesn't deliver an experience that makes you feel the way that the brand is defined, then the brand is flat. It doesn't, it's incongruent. So the first step is to define like the 3 or 4 emotions. What's the one primary emotion you want? Is it joy? Is it excitement? Is it confidence? Like, what is it you want people to feel? And then there might be a second or tertiary emotion you want also, but there's a North Star. And that actually, once you have that and people understand that, then the employees can actually internalize that and start looking for clues about, this is Lou Carbone's language, which I love, but like people can look for clues about what can they do to improve it.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. And we always work with end benefits from Rokic. It's like a scientific thing from long, long ago. But having that one emotion as a centerpiece, I think, is very important. And what you also see, because brand is most of the time separated from CX and EX, is that most CX is actually looked at from a business case perspective and from a functional optimization perspective. So what happens then that everybody is doing the same things because everyone needs to optimize and the consumers are everywhere the same. So you get actually a commodity customer experience instead of a brand colored customer experience. And if you look at the numbers here, Kantar, the big research company, did an analysis and it showed that 75% of your brand perception is created by your experiences. 25% is created by advertising and media. Very important. We love to work on that part. But if you don't match that with the 75%, then you're not building a strong brand or a consistent brand. You're just doing just one lag basically and the small one. So
Well, and too much of customer experience is break fix. It's fixing problems.
yeah,
And what happens if you fix all the problems? You end
yeah,
up with the average.
exactly. Yeah.
right? So like,
Yeah.
if you really want to create something that's emotionally engaging, you have the peaks in the journey are where it's meaningful and memorable. There's where the emotions. And a lot of these peaks are actually delivered by human to human interactions, particularly if we're talking about like travel, hospitality, restaurants, retail, like the places we work together. um, it's the human interaction is so key. Now there are agentic experiences, there are digital experiences, but they're complementary to the human. They're not replacing. If you strip the human out of the brand, it's a soulless brand.
Yeah, and I think also, especially in aviation, where we have some big clients there, you see a big trend in self-service. Of course, it's cost efficient. But what makes your airport or airline different if they all use the same systems? So your employees need to behave differently. Instead of just checking the tickets, it's now, making a little chat about the holiday or helping people by surprise or be proactive. Or so the employee expectation will change with the rise of self-service and AI for sure.
Let's take a few examples, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about why emotion is so important in these examples and why the human experience is so important. Let's take hotels as an example. I did some work with one hotel client, and one of the things that stuck with me is if you really want to create a meaningful and differentiated customer experience, it's actually the on-property experience that is the most meaningful and memorable. The digital experience of booking is actually really powerful, but like they can't stand out in the customer journey from Expedia and Travelocity and all these other things. So the return on investment and experience, or the return on experience, I call it. Sujay Saha and I coined that phrase, return on experience, when we were at PwC together. uh, like that is going to be much higher for the on property experience where it's meaningful and memorable. The digital portion of it is valuable, but what's really going to differentiate and make it memorable is actually the on property experience.
Yeah, that's totally true. And the issue here, and what we also feel when we work with our clients, is that how do you make it happen? How do you make it happen that things are being connected? And most of the issues that you can take away is work with a cross-divisional team from the different divisions on this specific project. So work together on an ambition of for the brand slash CX narrative. That will be one. Then we have one shared narrative for the total company and for the brand. But then also work together on the full journey and which kind of moments in that journey are we going to make our peak moments and which moments are on average, which are we fine with that. You know what I mean?
So when you're engaging with employees, as part of creating a better customer experience and bringing the brand to life, how is it similar versus different if you're dealing with like frontline employees in like um, an airline call center versus the frontline employees in a hotel or airport versus like in a coffee shop chain? Like how are those similar? How are those different?
I think it depends on the culture within the company mostly. For example, I know Starbucks just did a full transitioning of their employee program and the role of the employees in the restaurants. We've been working with or have been talking to Inspire brands. Maybe you know them too. There, you see that the role of the employees is less important than the role of the employees within Starbucks.
Is that Buffalo Wild Wings and other brands? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a great company with great strategy and vision. But we felt that if you compare to Starbucks, the role of the employee is way smaller in the total experience. And what I find interesting is that, for example, big restaurant brands have a very big book with everything in it, or PDF or whatever you have. But with how do you cook a burger, how do you make the coffee or the milkshake, but there is not a very clear just chapter on how the employees should behave and talk and interact with the customers. Whereas that part is 25-30% of the experience for sure.
I think I'm going to remember this right, but Mark Penn, who was a pollster to Clinton, and is now the CEO of Stagwell, one of the largest agency companies in the world. Um, he coined a phrase, words that work. And he actually did this seminal work that he wrote about with Coca-Cola, um, which, Coca-Cola, that if you think about the number of billions of times a day people consume it in restaurants and hotels, they call it at Coke, they call this immediate consumption, right? As opposed to future consumption, all the profit and stock prices in the immediate consumption. But Coke actually worked with Mark Penn to come up with the ideal phrase that employees should use and it actually, if they train, and Coke then invested in getting all the food service clients to use this words that work. And the words that work are, would you like a Coke to complete that order? And if someone uses those words, it actually drives sales. Now, the amazing thing from this is now, like, you can apply this at greater scale than you ever could, because you can start mining the social media, you can mine the conversations in the call center. There's lots of applications where you can much more quickly figure out the words that work and actually train the people to use them. So the question is, what are the words that work that bring your brand to life?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And then, of course, it's gesture too, huh? So it's words and gestures together. And with all these millions, billions interactions, think of the ROI of what you can deliver if you get this right, you know?
Well, this is where I'm so excited that we're collaborating, guys, because I've always enjoyed working with really creative people. Back when I was one of the founders of Booz Digital, and we brought creative people and not only digital, but like store design and other experience design together in joint teams. And I enjoying teaming on that. Excited to collaborate with you and your folks on frontline employee experiences to approach it from a strategy, culture, and experience design together, where the creative work you guys do is amazing. And then what I bring is the culture change side of it around how do you actually build habits in the organization and activate those habits at scale and combine them with insights. So I'm really excited that we met and we have a chance to collaborate.
Same here. And what I, just like you said, I think creativity is for us very important because then things are getting practical. And so we're not just coming up with strategy, we come up with actually ideas and we produce, for example, it could be a movie, it could be immersive experience, it could be anything. But then it's there, the story is there, but then we need to structure it. And that's also where you come in, to structure it and make it part actually of the organization. So you can't forget about it anymore, and then change happens. So I think that combination is very smart to do.
One of the things I'm going to tee up here, and we'll come back in a minute, is the mastermind groups that we do. So we're having a conversation right now, the two of us, and if anyone wants to make that a three-way conversation, they could reach out to us, and we're happy to spend time with you guys talking about what sparked your interest. But I run a series of mastermind groups, as you know, guys, which is a chance for leaders to get together with each other, to learn from each other, and not just listen to me talk, but to learn from each other and share stories with one another. So let's run the sizzle reel on the couple mastermind groups, and we'll come back on the other side. Allow me to briefly interrupt the podcast to share an invitation for you to join one of our mastermind groups. These groups are for leaders building out the CX function at their organization. They are for culture champions looking to develop and sustain behaviors that bring their organization's mission, vision, purpose, and values to life. I'm excited to team with Randy Rothenberg, former CEO of the IAB, on a mastermind group focused on experience as a winning marketing strategy. I'm teaming with Tamar Cohen, who has led CX and EX teams at Zoetis and Travelers, on another group focused on CX EX alignment. Each group meets monthly for 90 minutes. Members receive a coaching hour each month and can attend quarterly workshops. Go to JourneySpark's website for more information. Please DM me on LinkedIn with any questions. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Guys, we're talking about, how emotion matters, how to get beyond rational compliance, how to have emotional connection with the brand by your employees. How do you make that real? Tell us a little bit more about what you actually do when you work with clients to make this happen.
Yeah, actually quite simple. We're always have the ambition to grow a business. That's number one. So we need to get paid, and also it needs to be a reason for us to work with that company, or for the company to work with us, basically. So growth is number one. Then the second part is we want to create a credible brand, meaning what you promise on the outside, you prove on the inside. These two things together help to build long-term growth. So, and then we do actually three things: brand positioning. What's the story? And that's also company positioning narrative. So that's the key story and the starting point. And then we look towards the outside, think of advertising, design, social, TV, whatever needs we need to reach the target audience, basically. And then based on that promise, as we spoke about, we look at the customer experience. We focus mostly on the front line, the front end of that. So that's the design part of the app, for example, or the website, or the store, or the airport. For example, for also a big airline in Europe, we look at 4 or 5 spaces, spatial design, to bring the brand to life within the airport experience. Because when you go into the airport, you have a ticket of that specific airline, but then when you're in, you forget about the airline. You're on the airport. You lose the experience.
So in the past, I did a lot of work with Taco Underhill and his team, and he was known for EnviroCell and like being able to observe people and ethnography. And one of the things that always amazed me is that he could just walk through a store and he would find things to change just based on observing and watching the way they did things. Is that something you do too, like store walks or like basically, look at the physical environment and identify things to improve, which I'm sure you have a ton of experience that you probably find some immediate quick hits to solve.
Yeah, so the focus is there mostly on store and airports or aviation, and we are there to make things exciting, to make things engaging, and always with the brand as a starting point. Because if you don't use the brand as starting point, then you don't have any benchmark. What we're going to do, you know what I mean? I think especially airports don't have a clear idea what their brand's about. They think their brand is about the communication they do and their tagline. No, their brand's about their identity. What's their narrative? What's their mission? And how do you translate that into the CX? Is mostly forgotten. They just start to optimize based on the business case.
What are some real examples of like in an airport experience, some of the things that help bring the brand to life in the real physical world?
So we're working now with a German an airline, and they gave us 4 spaces. We need to design a exciting experience there. And one is about work. How can we change the work experience? The other one is about how can we make sure you can relax better? The other one is about how can we inspire people to do something different? And the last one is about actually helping disabled people to get a better experience at the airport.
What's interesting is you've highlighted different personas that are going through an airport and the different what you're highlighting is for those different personas, the emotion we want is actually not the same.
From a CX narrative point of view, so we always create a CX narrative, so you have a clear idea what you want to accomplish, but then you need to match that with the target audience. And there, the magic happens. Then you can come up with ideas that really match the hearts of your target audience, and that's fun. And we're now actually at the creative stage. We did a lot of research, and we did a strategy, and now the strategy is clear, and now it's all about ideas, ideas, ideas to bring excitement and to create some firsts. We always love to create firsts. You know what I mean? Like the first time that this happens on an airport around the world.
We've been working together for a little while, and I don't know if I've ever shared my experience collage with you. Is that something I've shared in the past?
I think so. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I think we have talked about it, but I'm going to share it. I've shared it with the audience before. I'd love to bring it in here and see what your thoughts are. Um, my mom's a collage artist, so to make this personal, people who've seen like my book cover, or the intro to the podcast or our website, like that's my mom's artwork. and she's a collage artist. That's a motion. It's a deconstructed customer journey. So it shouldn't surprise people that I like to think of experience as like a collage. It's got layers, they fit together, it has meaning, you make meaning out of it. You create the meaning in it too. It's not just the artist who creates it, but the audience creates the meaning also. And the way experience collage works is like this. There's a canvas you're going to fill in, and you want to paint to fill in the whole canvas. The bottom left corner of the canvas is functional benefits. And if you only do functional benefits, you're leaving a lot of empty canvas. It's going to feel empty. There's not enough emotion. So you want more, you want to get beyond the functional benefit. Now, if you don't have the functional benefits, there's the hole in the experience. But if you only focus on the functional benefits, the rest of it's also empty. So what do you need to do to fill in that space with the rest of your collage? If you go to the right, and I'm still a consultant, so there's a 2x2 here, right? So the bottom right is you're having an experience for yourself. So you move to the right of functional, and it's still for yourself, and that is meaning. So now you're creating a deeper meaning for the experience yourself. How do you connect with that individual's what that individual cares about and deliver an experience that's more purposeful, more meaningful to them? If you create an experience that's with others, but is still functional, you move up. Now that can be useful if it's a shared experience. So now it creates meaning because you're sharing it with someone else, but it's still functional benefits, right? So sharing, now what makes it both meaningful and sharing in the top right is community. So you're actually creating something that's shared with others that's meaningful. And now you have functional, sharing, meaning, and community. You fill the whole canvas. So what you're highlighting is you're actually designing meaning and sharing and community intentionally into the environment.
Absolutely. And it's fun because you have to make it a branded experience, but the experience and the engagement you give or you create for your target audience is the most important. But still think of how can you weave the brand in, because that's what it's all about also, to build that brand recognition and also to build a relationship with that brand, making sure they buy another trip from the same brand. And I think that's always the creative challenge we love to solve.
So where do you see this going now, given your focus on keeping it human, creating meaningful experiences, creating things that are in the physical environment? How do you see that AI impacting that?
I referred to that also a second ago. I think the human aspect will become much more important than it is at the moment, because probably we will get more agentic interactions throughout any experience in our lives. And like art, for example, great artists now, don't show their work online anymore because they're like, well, AI is going to grab it and going to recreate it. So I think the balance for brands and for businesses between what will I do via agentic solutions or mediate solutions and what will be the human part where we actually meet our customers, I think that's the balance where it's all about. And that balance needs to get a direction. And that direction, I think, is your conviction, your brand narrative, your mission, your ambition as a starting point. And based on that, you can look at your brand CX and your EX.
Yeah, I agree. I think the AI is a complement. It provides insights. It helps people to save time. It helps them to be a companion to them. In some cases, it'll create experiences that, are replacing what some humans do, but you should never have an experience that's only digital unless you're maybe Netflix.
And what we also notice, if you look at the advertising part, because we're absolutely doing a lot of advertising stuff here, especially in Europe, is that also creating fantastic AI videos or AI stories is a piece of art or a craft in itself again. So it's not going to be easy to create a fantastic AI campaign. It's going to be hard work, a lot of sweat, a gazillion iterations. You need to think about much more than we do in analog shoots. So it's also a craft. It's also creativity, just with different tools. So it doesn't matter if it's AI or analog. It's about the love, the crafts, and the skill you put into your creativity, and that matters.
Randy Rothenberg and I have been teaming at agenticadvertising.org, which is one of our clients at JourneySpark. Randy's a partner of mine at JourneySpark and used to be the CEO of the Interactive Advertising Bureau. And before that, he was the head of marketing and thought leadership at Booz when I was a partner there. We've known each other a long time, but we coined this phrase that we use in our Substack that we write together, the Winning Experience Substack, creativity, which is spelled with AI in it. So CRE parentheses AI and parentheses tivity. And the idea is AI and creativity are not opposing things, that you can actually use AI together. I like this phrase that we came up with personas of how companies are engaging in agentic and how they're embracing agentic. And we wrote about this in a recent Substack you'll see on the screen now, but all about the personas embracing the creative economy. And one of them is the molecular gastronomist, guys. And a molecular gastronomist is a chef who cooks with chemistry. So a chef that embraces science as part of cooking to cook better. Marketers can embrace AI. Be a molecular gastronomist. Don't run afraid of AI. Embrace it.
Yeah, embrace it, but then don't let it. It's not the end benefit. It's just a great tool to make somebody feel nice, feel great, and that's what it's all about. And the connection you make with the hearts of your customers or your employees, and that's a great job to work on.
When companies engage in this way to embrace their employees and their leaders as part of a brand transformation, brand cultural transformation versus just a marketing campaign, how does that change the way they think about their marketing externally once they do this work internally?
With the most corporates we work with the smaller ones, you see a clear connection. It's easier to work with the board, have a clear narrative, have a clear positioning, and they all feel, yes, of course, we need to align our employees in this because they need to prove this through the customer experience, employee experience, all that. Bigger corporations are more siloed. So when there is a fantastic overall narrative and an ambition that is translated to the employees and we have behaviors internally, it's not necessarily easy to convince the marketing department to use that. And I still believe if you have that internal engine and you can match that with the customer insights, then you're telling a real story. And that real story also you feel when you interact with the brand. The issue is, I think, with most marketing departments, and not all of them, some are great, of course, but is that they try to create something new just based on the insights of the customers. But then you lose your brand identity a little bit. So the play is find the customer insights, but then also make sure your identity is still very fierce in there, and then bring the two together. And then internal and external starts to align. And when that aligns, boom, you have growth right there because you match the customer insights and you do it in a real and credible way. So that is sometimes hard.
This is the inverse of when people say culture eats your strategy for breakfast. Well, if you develop your strategy and your brand and your culture in a way that are harmonious, it actually amplifies your brand.
Totally. And also, I was writing down, you got economies of scale, but I'm like, maybe we could also look at economies of synchronization. Because if you synchronize, there's less friction, there's less noise, people work in the same direction. I think you can reduce a lot of costs when things are more in sync instead of siloed.
So this has been a ton of fun. I know you've sparked a lot of great ideas for me. I'm sure you have for the audience too. If folks want to get in touch with you, is LinkedIn the best way? Is the Lemon Scented Tea website the best way?
I would say LinkedIn is great. You can also go to the website. My phone number is even there. So both are completely fine with me. Love to get in contact with all these great folks.
Yeah. And I know that we're doing joint meetings with folks. So feel free to reach out to Guys directly. And if you want to talk with us together, I'm always happy to do a meeting with Guys. He's a brilliant guy and a lot of fun to collaborate with.
Awesome. Sounds good.